Season 1 of Dexter introduces Dexter Morgan, a forensic blood spatter analyst for the Miami Metro Police Department. By day, Dexter helps legally put criminals behind bars, and by night, he is a serial killer who kills other killers that the justice system has failed to catch. Dexter lives by a strict moral code to only kill those who deserve it, instilled in him at a young age by his late adoptive father, Detective Harry Morgan, in his effort to sate Dexter's darker impulses. Dexter performs all of his murders in his own pre-organized kill room, disposes of the bodies at sea, and saves samples of his victims' blood to add to his collection. At the police department, Dexter works alongside his adoptive sister, Detective Deborah Morgan. Deborah has long held resentment toward Dexter for the closeness he shared with her father, unaware that the many hunting trips they went on together were actually to help Dexter satiate his desire for killing. Working alongside Dexter and Deborah is Vince Masuka, the head of the forensics department, Detective Angel Batista, who is trying to win back his estranged wife, Lieutenant Maria LaGuerta, their ambitious superior, and Detective James Dokes, the only person in Dexter's life suspicious of his true nature. The police department begins investigating a new serial killer dubbed the Ice Truck Killer, who uses extreme cold temperatures to bloodlessly dismember his victims. When the Ice Truck Killer discovers that Dexter is pursuing him, he breaks into Dexter's apartment to study him. The Ice Truck Killer then begins taunting Dexter by leaving body parts of his victims at locations that Dexter had visited with his adoptive father Harry as a child. The Ice Truck Killer also discovers Dexter's own serial killing ways and recovers the bodies of his victims and plants them for the police to find. When Dexter and his allies manage to save one of the Ice Truck Killer's latest victims, they learn that the murderer frequently uses throat lozenges. Meanwhile, to cover up his detached personality, Dexter enters into a relationship with a single mother named Rita, who is still recovering from past domestic abuse and therefore similarly hesitant toward intimacy. Rita's estranged husband Paul is paroled from prison and, claiming to be reformed, attempts to re-enter her life and reconcile with their children, despite Rita's hesitance. As Paul grows violent once again, Rita is forced to hit him with a baseball bat to defend herself and escape. Paul uses this to his advantage, pressing charges against Rita for assault in an attempt to be granted custody of their children. In response, Dexter attacks Paul and frames him for a drug overdose, causing the man to be sent back to prison. Paul pleads with Rita to believe that Dexter framed him, leading to Rita finding evidence that confirms her abusive ex-husband's claims. Eventually, Deborah and Batista discover that the Ice Truck Killer is a taxidermist named Neil Perry, who confesses to all of the murders. LaGuerta is furious when her superior, Captain Matthews, takes full credit for the arrest, despite her and her department's hard work. Dexter is at first disappointed that the Ice Truck Killer is simply a mentally unwell man, but upon speaking with Perry, is relieved to realize that he is not in fact the murderer, and the real serial killer mastermind is still at large as a worthy adversary. Deborah then begins dating a man named Rudy Cooper, who manufactures prosthetics for the hospital. The pair quickly fall in love and make plans to build a life together, though unbeknownst to everyone, Rudy is in fact the Ice Truck Killer. Meanwhile, Dexter learns that his biological father, Joe Driscoll, has recently died and left him his home and all of his belongings. Dexter suspects that his father may have been murdered as he arrives at the home to clean everything out. Rita, Deborah, and Rudy arrive to assist, and Rudy attempts to bond with Dexter, wanting the approval of his girlfriend's adoptive brother. Driscoll's elderly neighbor Irma recognizes Rudy as a repairman who previously visited the home of Dexter's father. Fearing Irma could expose his secret identity as Driscoll's killer, Rudy also murders Irma. Elsewhere, the police find a hotel room covered in the blood of the Ice Truck Killer's drained victims, proving that the imprisoned Neil Perry is not the actual murderer. The bloody scene prompts Dexter to remember repressed memories from his childhood, including witnessing the brutal murder of his mother Laura when he was only 3 years old, then forced to sit in a locked shipment container covered in her blood. Laura had been an informant for Detective Harry Morgan, who then took Dexter in and did everything in his power to shield the young boy from the memories of his traumatic past. As LaGuerta publicly denounces the department's handling of Neil Perry's arrest, Captain Matthews becomes furious and demotes her, bringing in Esme Pascal to replace her as lieutenant. Detective Batista theorizes that the Ice Truck Killer's penchant for dismembering his victims may be due to an amputee fetish, and seeks a professional opinion of prosthetics maker Rudy for his input. Fearing Batista is onto him, a masked Rudy stabs the detective detective, though is run off by a group of strangers who save Batista's life. Rudy then takes Deborah out on a boat and proposes to her, which she happily accepts. But upon finding a lozenge wrapper, Deborah realizes that her new fiancé is in fact the ice truck killer. Rudy then chokes Deborah unconscious and prepares to make her his next victim. Meanwhile, Dexter realizes that Rudy was Batista's attacker, and in turn, the ice truck killer. And so, he races to save his sister from certain death. Meanwhile, LaGuerta and Dokes reach the same conclusion and begin their own hunt for Rudy to avenge the injured Batista. As the season comes to a close, Dexter follows clues left for him by Rudy to discover that the ice truck killer is in fact his biological brother Brian, who had been by Dexter's side to witness the horrific killing of their mother. While Dexter repressed his memories, Brian was sent to a mental institution and diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Brian confronts Dexter in their childhood home, wanting to kill Deborah together as a sadistic family reunion. Instead, Dexter saves his sister and is heralded as a hero. While in secret, he murders Brian and stages it to look self-inflicted, knowing that no one would view Dexter as a hero if they knew the truth about his murderous impulses. If you want to keep your identity and personal information safe and secure online to where not even the likes of Dexter Morgan could uncover it, you're gonna need this video sponsor, Aura. With just a simple search of my personal cell phone number on Google, I not only found results listing my name, age, email, and home address, but also my wife's phone number, email addresses, and her entire residential history, dating back to when she still lived with her parents. This is super scary stuff, and now that we're about to have our first child, I want to be as proactive as possible in protecting my family's online data. And that's where Aura comes in. Basically, if you've ever received a spam call or email, it's because a data broker has collected and sold your data. They can do this without your consent and profit billions of dollars selling your personal and private information to marketers, scammers, and even stalkers. While they are legally required to remove your data if asked, they can make this process exhausting, complicated, and confusing. But Aura takes care of the entire process for you, not only ensuring that your data is removed from these sites, but stays gone for good. Maybe you're already using some other digital security service or VPN, but without Aura, that's like locking the front door but leaving the back door open. With just one app, Aura offers alerts if your personal information is found on the dark web, real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, 24/7 identity theft monitoring, US-based around-the-clock support, plus a VPN, password manager, antivirus, and more. Plus, if anything ever does go wrong, Aura offers $5 million in identity theft insurance, and US-based fraud experts are available 24/7. So try Aura for free for 14 days at aura.com/recapandchill. In those 2 weeks, you'll discover where your data is being exposed and sold. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. So thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the recap. In Season 2, despite perfectly covering up his murder of Brian, Dexter is under intense scrutiny from Detective Dokes, who remains suspicious about his colleague's involvement in the ice truck killings. Due to Dokes' watchful eye, Dexter finds it difficult to satiate his urges to kill. Meanwhile, Deborah is struggling from PTSD over having unknowingly been engaged to the ice truck killer, leading to LaGuerta worrying for her emotional stability. Meanwhile, LaGuerta begins an affair with her new superior Pascal's fiancé, leading to the woman having an emotional breakdown and Captain Matthews reinstating LaGuerta as lieutenant. 30 garbage bags containing the body parts of Dexter's various victims are then found in the local bay, and the killer is dubbed the Bay Harbor Butcher. The FBI, led by Special Agent Frank Lundy, are brought in to work with the Miami Metro detectives to uncover the identity of the Butcher, leading Dexter to worry that he might soon be caught. Deborah begins working closely with Lundy, leading to the two developing a romance, though Deborah is unaware that the killer she is trying to catch is none other than her adopted brother. As the victims are identified as violent criminals and killers who evaded arrest, Lundy suspects that the Butcher may in fact be a member of the police department. As the story of the Bay Harbor Butcher quickly grows in infamy, it inspires a comic book entitled The Dark Defender, portraying the killer as a vigilante hero. As the FBI struggles to determine the Butcher's identity, Dokes remains suspicious of Dexter and begins a reckless, independent investigation. LaGuerta warns warns Dokes to stop harassing his colleague, while Dexter tricks the detective into intimidating an innocent suspect, tarnishing Dokes' reputation and leading to his suspension. Meanwhile, Rita refuses to listen to her incarcerated husband Paul's warnings about Dexter framing him. Unfortunately, Paul is then murdered by a fellow prisoner, leading Rita to feeling guilt over not helping her husband clear his name and earn his release. Rita confronts Dexter over her suspicions, and he confirms that he drugged Paul to have him arrested and remove him from Rita and her children's lives. Rita forgives Dexter for his actions, but upon questioning how he obtained the drugs to frame Paul with, Dexter lies about himself being an addict. Rita believes that this explains all of Dexter's strange and erratic behavior, and offers her support in helping him get clean. To keep up with this charade, Dexter begins going to Narcotics Anonymous, where he opens up about his violent urges, which he calls his dark passenger. Dexter finds support in his NA sponsor Lila, who accepts him for who he is, and even voices her admiration for the Bay Harbor Butcher's violent vigilante justice against other serial killers. This eventually leads to Dexter and Lila beginning a secret love affair. Finally, seeking closure for his traumatic past, Dexter tracks down one of his mother's killers, Santos Jimenez, who explains that Laura Moser was killed due to being an informant and secret lover of Detective Harry Morgan. Inspired by Lila's oblivious encouragement that using drugs will never cure the pain in his heart, Dexter chooses to allow his mother's killer to live. As Dexter continues to get closer to Lila, she confesses that while high, she had set her abusive ex-boyfriend's house on fire, inadvertently killing him. Dexter comforts and encourages Lila, assuring her that her actions were justified. When Rita discovers Dexter's affair with Lila, she ends their relationship. Despite this breakup, Dexter is still present in the lives of Rita's children, frustrating the possessive Lila, who burns down her own apartment to play the victim and move into Dexter's apartment. Santos then returns and tries to murder Dexter, but his colleagues save him as Santos flees. Dexter then tracks Santos down once again, and this time shows no mercy, murdering him with a chainsaw and avenging his mother's death. Dexter then discovers that the possessive Lila has broken into Rita's home to scare her and her children. As Dexter investigates his unstable girlfriend Lila, he realizes that she was the one who brought Santos in to attack him, hoping to draw Dexter closer to her. Dexter becomes scared for the lives of Rita and her children, and demands that Lila stay away from them. Spurned by Dexter, Lila begins a relationship with Batista and frames him for assault. Lila promises to drop her charges against Batista if Dexter agrees to reconcile their romance. Meanwhile, Lundy suspects that Dokes may be the Bay Harbor Butcher, as he was the lead detective on several of the cases in which the serial killer victims got off freely. This logic helps Dokes solidify his own suspicions of Dexter being the butcher. Dokes breaks into Dexter's apartment and finds his collection of blood samples taken from his victims. Unfortunately, believing Dokes to be the butcher, the FBI raid his car and find the blood samples, acquiring all of the evidence they need to convict Dokes as the infamous serial killer. In turn, Dokes goes on the run, with only LaGuerta believing his innocence. Dokes then confronts Dexter as he is trying to clean up the remnants of evidence that could point to him as the butcher. The two men fight, resulting in Dexter being shot in the leg before subduing Dokes and locking him up. Dexter then creates further falsified evidence to frame Dokes as the butcher, all while plotting to kill him. But before he does, Dokes claims to know a secret about his adoptive father, Harry. When Dokes refuses to cooperate, Dexter goes to Captain Matthews for answers, learning that his father, Harry Morgan, did not die by a heart attack as he was led to believe, but by his own hands out of guilt for not doing enough to keep violent criminals off the street. Dexter then tracks down another worthy criminal prey and murders him in front of a distraught Dokes, reminding Dexter of a moment where Harry had witnessed him murdering a previous criminal target. Dexter then realizes that his father's death was his fault, as Harry blamed himself for the man that Dexter had become. Ultimately, a guilty Dexter announces his decision to free Dokes and turn himself in, but first spends a final day settling his affairs. He shares one final moment of happiness with Rita and her children before meeting with Deborah, where he will finally reveal his darkest secret to his sister. But before he can, a crazed Lila kills Dokes so that he can continue taking the blame as the butcher, and Dexter can be free to be with her. With Dokes dead, the Bay Harbor Butcher case is officially closed. Lundy departs Miami for his next case, leaving his relationship with Deborah uncertain. Dexter finally reconciles his relationship with Rita, enraging Lila, who kidnaps Rita's children and threatens to kill them. Dexter saves the kids and then kills Lila, ending her reign of terror and ensuring that there is no one left alive that knows his secret as the true Bay Harbor Butcher. In Season 3, Dexter has returned to his normal routine of helping the Miami Metro Police Department catch criminals while murdering killers in secret. While Dexter hunts his next target, a murderous drug dealer named Freebo, an innocent man named Oscar Prado intervenes, forcing Dexter to kill him in self-defense. Dexter becomes dismayed at having killed an innocent man, going against the moral code instilled in him by his late father. Oscar's brother Miguel Prado is a powerful assistant district attorney who desperately wants to catch his brother's killer, and so he begins working closely with Dexter, unaware that his new partner is the murderer he is searching for. As the pair begin their investigation, they form an unlikely friendship. When Dexter tracks down and kills Freebo, he is caught by Miguel, who believes that the drug dealer was in fact Oscar's killer. Dexter lies about killing Freebo in self-defense, after which Miguel thanks him for avenging his brother and helps him cover up the murder. Meanwhile, Deborah and the Miami Metro Police Department begin investigating a series of killings in which all of the victims have a connection to the missing Freebo. Detective Joey Quinn is transferred to the Miami Metro Department and partners up with Deborah on the investigation to bring down this new serial killer, dubbed the Skinner. Amidst this investigation, Deborah is approached by Sergeant Yuki Amato, who warns that Quinn is under investigation by Internal Affairs and asks Deborah to keep an eye on her new partner and report back on all of his actions. But as Deborah learns to trust her new partner, she instead warns Quinn of the investigation, forcing Amato to back off. Elsewhere, Rita discovers that she is pregnant with Dexter's baby. Although Dexter is at first concerned that his lack of emotions will make him a bad father, upon discovering and murdering a local predator, he becomes reassured in his abilities to do what must be done to protect his children. And so, Dexter proposes to Rita, believing himself ready to be the perfect family man. As the bond and trust continues to grow between Miguel and Dexter, Miguel tells Dexter about a man who murdered his own wife, that Miguel was frustratingly unable to convict. Dexter takes matters into his own hands and kills the man, much to Miguel's delight. Miguel then proposes that they continue working together to enact violent justice against those who deserve it. Meanwhile, Deborah continues leading the charge in the investigation to catch the Skinner. She is aided in her quest by Quinn's criminal informant, Anton. As Anton helps connect Deborah to the shadier underbelly of Miami, the pair begin a secret romance. Unaware of this affair, Batista suggests that Anton be used as bait to draw out the Skinner. Despite Deborah's resistance, the plan is set, leading to Anton being kidnapped by the serial killer. The Skinner reveals himself to Anton as a man named George King, to whom Freebo owed a large sum of money. At first, King's goal was to track down associates of Freebo and force them into giving up his location, but eventually King's lust for murder became his primary motivation, and Freebo's associates were his perfect victims. Eventually, Deborah and Quinn find and save Anton, though King manages to escape. Anton is now the only living witness who can testify to George King being the Skinner, but his romantic relationship with Deborah threatens to jeopardize the case. Dexter tries to comfort Deborah with the revelation that her father, Harry Morgan, had also had an affair with an informant, though Dexter keeps secret that that informant was in fact his late mother, Laura. As Dexter and Miguel continue their secret vigilante partnership, Miguel expresses his frustration with the legal system helping criminals evade conviction. The main target of Miguel's ire is his rival, defense attorney Ellen Wolf, who has launched her own investigation into Miguel's past history of misconduct and unethical tactics to ensure criminals are put behind bars. Miguel suggests that Ellen be Dexter's next target for murder, but Dexter refuses, as she doesn't fit his moral code, leaving him concerned by Miguel's escalating behavior. Eventually, Miguel apologizes and Dexter asks him to be his best man at his wedding. Miguel then asks Dexter to teach him how to commit murder, and so a reluctant Dexter instructs Miguel on his late father's moral code, how to find the perfect criminal target, and ultimately how to get away with murder. This leads to Miguel growing even more reckless, ultimately going rogue and murdering his rival Ellen Wolf. Dexter is dismayed by Miguel's actions and leads the police to her body before reprimanding his friend for his carelessness and lack of adherence to their moral code. Dexter then realizes that Miguel has been manipulating and using him since the start of their friendship to achieve his own selfish and murderous goals. And so, the former friends are now bitter rivals. Miguel strikes up an affair with LaGuerta, manipulating her into interfering with Dexter's work, while Dexter exposes Miguel's affair to his wife, then gathers evidence of Miguel's crimes. In turn, Miguel threatens to expose Deborah and Anton's secret relationship, which would not only ruin their growing case against the Skinner, but also jeopardize Deborah's career. Ultimately, both men realize that the only way to resolve this conflict is to kill the other. Secretly, LaGuerta is using her new affair with Miguel to also investigate her suspicions that Miguel was involved in Ellen's murder. She provides hair samples to Dexter to confirm her suspicions, but Dexter wants to kill Miguel instead of having him arrested, which could lead to Miguel exposing Dexter's own crimes. Realizing LaGuerta is onto him, Miguel plots to murder her. Instead, Miguel is captured by Dexter and taken to a new kill room inside Ellen's house. As Miguel pleads for his life, he calls Dexter his brother. But Dexter coldly explains that he has already killed his own brother Brian, as well as Miguel's brother Oscar. And with that, Dexter strangles Miguel to death and stages the body to frame the Skinner. Unfortunately, before his death, Miguel had aligned with the Skinner George King, telling him that Dexter is the only person knowledgeable of Freebo's whereabouts. And so, King captures Dexter and attempts to torture him for information. Instead, Dexter reveals that he killed Freebo long ago, before freeing himself and murdering King. As the season comes to a close, Dexter is finally free from all of the threats to his way of life, allowing him to marry Rita, with Deborah by his side as his new best man. In Season 4, several months have passed, and Dexter is having a difficult time balancing his family life, including raising his newborn son Harrison, and his secret life controlled by his murderous impulses. Tensions grow between Dexter and Rita when she discovers that her husband has secretly kept his old apartment, unaware that he uses it to prepare for his murders and store his blood sample collection. As they go to couples therapy to work on their issues, Rita is comforted by their neighbor Elliot, who professes his feelings for her with a kiss. When Dexter easily forgives this act, Rita becomes concerned that he doesn't truly love her. Amidst these struggles, a new serial killer emerges in Miami, bringing FBI agent Frank Lundy back to lead the investigation. Lundy explains that this murderer, dubbed the Trinity Killer, has killed 3 victims every year in different cities for the past 3 decades. Lundy has long hunted the mysterious Trinity Killer and is desperate to finally bring them to justice. As Quinn joins the investigation into the Trinity Killer, he begins a relationship with a journalist named Christine, who is also investigating the case. Elsewhere within the Miami Metro Police Department, Batista and LaGuerta have begun a secret romance of their own. But when Captain Matthews discovers this affair, he threatens to transfer them to separate departments if they don't break up, as their relationship could create legal issues for their unit. Instead, Batista and LaGuerta hastily get married, protecting themselves from any legal or professional scrutiny. Meanwhile, Deborah begins looking into her late father Harry's mystery informant lover, unaware that the woman's identity was Laura Moser, Dexter's mother. Deborah is distraught when she discovers that Harry had developed a pattern of sleeping with many of his informants, turning her off from continuing her research. As Deborah continues her relationship with Anton, she also becomes conflicted by the return of her ex Lundy. But as Deborah and Lundy finally reconcile their relationship and draw closer to uncovering the Trinity Killer's identity, they are shot at by a mystery assailant, leaving Lundy dead and Deborah in critical condition. Dexter consoles his grieving sister while using Lundy's notes to uncover the Trinity Killer's patterns. As Dexter tracks the killer to his home, he uncovers that the unassuming man is named Arthur Mitchell, who is a high school teacher and church deacon that runs a charity building houses for homeless people across America, and lives a normal life with his wife and children in the suburbs. Instead of turning Arthur over to the police, Dexter poses as a man named Kyle Butler to get close to the Trinity Killer to study him. As the pair grow closer, Arthur helps Dexter reconcile with Rita and reveals his own tragic past. Arthur confesses to having accidentally caused his sister's death as a child, leading to his mother's death and father's abuse, ultimately culminating in the young Arthur also being forced to kill his father. Dexter realizes that all of Arthur's murders are a constant pattern of replicating the deaths of his family. family. When Dexter witnesses Arthur abusing his own family, he snaps and attacks him, exposing his dark passenger persona and threatening to kill the Trinity Killer in front of his wife and children. Arthur's family intervenes and Dexter flees, growing concerned that he will one day treat his own family like Arthur treats his. Meanwhile, as Deborah attempts to solve Lundy's death, she realizes that the reporter Christine was in fact the killer. Deborah gets a reluctant Quinn to help her gather DNA evidence, which Masuka uses to confirm that Christine is in fact the daughter of the Trinity Killer. A desperate Christine seeks the help of her father, confirming that she began her affair with Quinn and killed Lundy to help cover Arthur's tracks as the Trinity Killer. Despite this, Arthur refuses to accept Christine as his daughter or offer his help now that the police are onto her. And so, as the police close in on Christine, she instead willingly dies, having given her life for a father that would never love her. Having closure now that Lundy's death is solved and his killer met a fitting end, Deborah restarts her investigation into Harry Morgan's affairs with his informants. This leads to Deborah finally discovering Harry's tryst with Laura Moser, the biological mother of Dexter and Brian. Deborah is shocked that her adopted brother is in fact the biological brother of her murderous late fiance, the ice truck killer. Dexter fears this revelation will lead to Deborah uncovering his secret life, but instead, Deborah believes that Brian had simply used her to get closer to Dexter, leading Deborah to comfort her adopted brother. As the police discover that Arthur Mitchell is the Trinity Killer, Dexter races to murder him before he is arrested. Unfortunately, Arthur then kidnaps a young boy, preparing to start a new cycle of killings once again. Dexter realizes that Arthur actually kills 4 victims per cycle, starting off with a young boy who represents the death of his own childhood and burying their bodies under the homes that his charity builds. As the season comes to a close, Dexter saves the Trinity Killer's next young victim before finally capturing and killing Arthur Mitchell. Dexter is resolved that this will be his final murder, as his love for his family outweighs the power of his dark passenger. But as Dexter returns home to happily reunite with his family, he horrifically discovers that Rita had been murdered by Arthur before his death, with baby Harrison left sitting in his mother's blood, just as Dexter had been left after witnessing his own mother's murder as a child. In Season 5, Dexter is still in shock following the murder of Rita, and blames himself for not killing Arthur Mitchell sooner. His neighbor Elliot is visibly distraught over Rita's death, in stark contrast to Dexter's emotional detachment, drawing the suspicions of Quinn. When Quinn learns of the kiss between Rita and Elliot, he grows suspicious of Dexter's involvement in Rita's death. As Deborah's heart breaks for her brother, she finds comfort in Quinn, leading to the pair beginning a romance. In Dexter's grief, he violently snaps on a stranger who provokes him, beating him to death in a fit of rage. With that, Dexter realizes that despite feeling emotions differently than others, he did truly love Rita and is in deep mourning over her loss. As Quinn begins a secret investigation into Dexter, he discovers his Kyle Butler alias, which was used to befriend Arthur Mitchell. LaGuerta dissuades Quinn from investigating his colleague, but Quinn ignores his superior's warnings. Quinn tracks down Arthur's family, who have been placed in witness protection by the FBI, in the hopes of getting them to confirm Dexter as Kyle Butler, and therefore his secret relationship with the Trinity Killer. Instead, Quinn is stopped by the FBI, and an angry LaGuerta suspends him from the department for his seemingly unfounded investigation into his own grieving colleague. Meanwhile, Dexter struggles to be a single parent to Harrison while sending Rita's other children to live with their grandparents. As he attempts to balance fatherhood, police work, and satisfying his darker urges, he catches a man named Boyd Fowler disposing of barrels in a nearby marsh. Upon discovering that the marsh is filled with countless barrels containing the corpses of female victims, Dexter breaks into Boyd's home and kills him, only to discover a woman named Lumen Pierce has been held captive by Boyd in his attic. Lumen reveals that Boyd was just one of many abusers and killers of women, and that her other tormentors are still at large. Lumen wants Dexter's help in bringing her other abusers to justice, and although Dexter first refuses, when Lumen recklessly seeks vengeance herself, he reluctantly agrees to help her track down and kill all of the men responsible for her abuse and the murders of the Barrel Girls. Elsewhere, Deborah begins working on a case to bring down a pair of murderous robbers, Carlos and Marco Fuentes. LaGuerta authorizes a raid to capture the brothers, leading to a chaotic shootout that ends with Deborah killing Carlos, Marco escaping, and several civilian casualties caught in the crossfire. The department comes under massive scrutiny for the debacle, leading to LaGuerta publicly placing all of the blame on Deborah Deborah to avoid taking any responsibility for herself. Carlos Fuentes is the first person that Deborah has been forced to kill on the job, though like her adopted brother Dexter, she feels this death was justified. Batista comforts and supports Deborah, even though this means going against his own wife. An internal affairs investigation is opened against Batista when he punches a fellow officer for disrespecting LaGuerta. IA investigator Jim McCourt begins looking into the assault, forcing LaGuerta to cut a deal with him to protect her husband. And so, LaGuerta helps internal affairs plot a sting operation on a corrupt narcotics officer named Stan Liddy, leading to his termination. Quinn then commiserates with Liddy over their shared bitterness toward LaGuerta, and Quinn offers to pay Liddy to help in his secret investigation into the connection between Dexter Morgan and Arthur Mitchell. Meanwhile, a truck attempting to dispose of the barrels of dead women gets into a car accident. Though the driver flees the scene, the police discover the victims, drawing attention to this new group of serial killers, dubbed the Barrel Girl Gang. Dexter is worried that this will lead the police to Lumen and their vigilante quest for vengeance, and so he begins tampering with evidence to hide her identity. The truck belongs to renowned motivational speaker Jordan Chase and his bodyguard Cole Harmon, though they claim the truck was stolen and that they have an alibi to prove their innocence. Lumen identifies Cole as one of her attackers, and so Dexter helps her kill Cole and dispose of his body, unaware that Liddy is spying on them and capturing evidence to deliver to Quinn. When Deborah discovers Quinn's secret investigation into her brother, she angrily breaks up with him. When Liddy tries to deliver the incriminating photos of Dexter to Quinn, he instead turns Liddy away, wanting to end the investigation due to it costing him his relationship with Deborah. But Liddy refuses to drop the case, thinking that exposing Dexter will salvage his reputation and career. And so, Liddy captures Dexter and tries to force him into confessing to his many crimes, as the illegally obtained evidence will be inadmissible in court. Instead, Dexter fights back and kills Liddy, hiding his body right as Quinn arrives to meet up with his former accomplice. Unbeknownst to both Dexter and Quinn, a drop of Liddy's blood falls onto Quinn's shoe. When Liddy's body is found by the police, they discover his extensive secret partnership with Quinn, and when they investigate Quinn, they discover Liddy's blood on his shoe, leading to his arrest. Elsewhere, Dexter and Lumen track down Emily Birch, the first victim of the Barrel Girl Gang who survived her abusive encounter with them. Emily confirms that Jordan Chase is the gang's leader, in addition to revealing the identity of the only remaining member, Alex Tilden. Dexter teaches Lumen how to murder Alex in an act of vengeance, leading to the two having sex. Dexter realizes that despite revealing his true self to Lumen, she does not see him as a monster, but as a hero. As Dexter and Lumen plot a way to bypass Jordan Chase's extensive security to vengefully kill the final living Barrel Girl Gang member, the criminal mastermind instead turns the tables. He forces Emily to lure Lumen into a trap. By the time Dexter arrives, Chase has killed Emily and captured Lumen, leaving only a trail of blood for Dexter to follow. As Dexter races to save Lumen, Deborah continues her own investigation into the Barrel Girl's case, realizing that all of the killers are being murdered by a pair of vigilantes. Ultimately, Dexter saves Lumen, after which they murder Jordan Chase together. As they clean up the crime scene to cover up their involvement, Deborah arrives, catching them in the act, but not seeing their faces. Instead of arresting the pair, she's inspired by her own experience of killing Carlos Fuentes, and tells the vigilantes to flee before the rest of the authorities arrive. In the end, Dexter helps exonerate Quinn for Liddy's death by forging the blood sample results, then encourages Deborah to continue her relationship with the detective if it makes her happy. Lumen decides to leave Miami, having found closure and now ready to put her vigilante killings behind her. Dexter bids Lumen an emotional farewell, saddened by her departure, but inspired by their relationship that he may one day find true love, happiness, and a peace from his inner darkness. In Season 6, a year has passed since Rita's death, and Dexter has finally returned to his normal life, balancing police work and serial killing. Meanwhile, LaGuerta is promoted to captain, though she is now divorced from Batista. Batista's younger sister Jamie becomes Harrison's new babysitter, and Quinn prepares to propose to his girlfriend Deborah. But when Deborah realizes Quinn's plan, she preemptively rejects him, as she is not ready for marriage. This sends Quinn into a depressive spiral, leading him to fall into alcoholism and start sleeping around with multiple women. The Miami Metro Police Department then begins looking into a new series of murders conducted by the aptly named Doomsday Killers. Unbeknownst to the police, these killers are Professor James Geller and Travis Marshall, who believe that their murders, inspired by the Book of Revelation, will bring forth the biblical end of days. Geller is a former professor of religious studies who began this supposed quest from God, taking his former student Travis under his wing as his apprentice. But as Travis becomes frequently distracted and reluctant to carry out their killings, Geller is constantly forced to persuade him into seeing their divine mission through to its end. While trying to uncover the identity of the Doomsday Killers, Dexter meets brother Sam, an ex-con turned minister whose new life purpose is to help rehabilitate criminals to lead better lives. Dexter doubts that people can change, but nevertheless befriends Sam, and the two men share a mutual respect for each other despite their differing worldviews. Due to brother Sam's inspiration, when Harrison becomes sick and is forced to undergo surgery, an anxious Dexter shockingly finds himself praying to God to watch over his son. As Dexter continues bonding with Sam, he reveals the darkness he has felt inside himself ever since witnessing his mother's murder as an infant. When brother Sam is shot by a gang member named Nick that he had previously tried to rehabilitate, Dexter wants to enact vengeance against the man, but Sam instead preaches forgiveness. But when Sam succumbs to his wounds, Dexter can't bring himself to spare his friend's killer, and instead vengefully murders Nick. Following his betrayal of all that brother Sam has imparted on him, Dexter begins seeing visions of his late serial killer brother Brian, who encourages him to give himself over fully to his dark side. Dexter then learns that Arthur Mitchell's wife and daughter have been murdered, supposedly by the Trinity Killer himself. Dexter tracks down Arthur's son Jonah, discovering he had killed his mother after she blamed her children for Arthur's actions. A remorseful Jonah wants Dexter to kill him, but Dexter instead spares his life, allowing him to abandon the specter of Brian and return to following his father Harry's moral code. Meanwhile, Masuka hires a new forensics intern named Lewis, who is secretly obsessed with both the ice truck killer and his new colleague Dexter Morgan. Lewis strikes up a romance with Batista's sister Jamie, acquires a prosthetic hand previously owned by Brian Moser, and is then sadly rebuked by Dexter after showing him a video game he is developing that glorifies the Bay Harbor Butcher. Deborah becomes a public hero after valiantly taking down an active shooter. This prompts Deputy Chief Matthews to promote her to lieutenant over the more experienced Batista, frustrating both him and LaGuerta. In her new position, Deborah promotes Officer Mike Anderson to detective, bringing him in to help solve the Doomsday Killer's case. Deborah also begins investigating the death of a call girl, despite LaGuerta hastily trying to label it as a simple overdose. Deborah refuses to accept this, as evidence points to someone else being present at the time of her death. Deborah discovers that Matthews had been with the call girl when she overdosed, but failed to save her life, and not wanting to be caught in a shameful PR debacle, he fled the scene. LaGuerta reveals that she has known about Matthews' history with call girls, using this knowledge to blackmail him into promoting her to captain. And now that Deborah has uncovered this secret, LaGuerta strongarms Matthews into retiring and threatens Deborah into keeping quiet about this revelation. Deborah also begins seeing the department's therapist to properly address the violence she has been forced to be a part of as a detective, where for the first time she unpacks all of her emotional baggage, including the jealousy she felt over Dexter's relationship with her father Harry. But through her therapy sessions, Deborah realized that she doesn't just love Dexter as her adopted brother, but may in fact love him romantically. Elsewhere, Dexter's independent investigation into the Doomsday Killers has led to him uncovering the identity of Travis, who, when confronted, explains that Geller is the mastermind behind their murders, and he is becoming more and more of a reluctant accomplice. Dexter chooses to let Travis go, hoping to secretly follow him to catch Geller. As Travis and Geller kidnap a woman named Holly with the intentions of making her their next victim, Travis instead has second thoughts, going against his master's wishes and releasing her. Travis then abandons Geller and moves in with his sister Lisa, while Holly goes to the police to testify. When Lisa's body is discovered as the newest victim of the Doomsday Killers, Dexter realizes that Geller must have been the culprit, and convinces Travis to help him bring down the professor once and for all. But as Dexter and Travis work together, together, Dexter shockingly discovers the long-murdered body of Geller in a freezer belonging to Travis. And that's when Dexter realizes that Geller was Travis's first victim in the Doomsday Killings, and the professor is now simply Travis's own dark passenger, guiding him on his supposed mission from God. As the season comes to a close, a newly emboldened Travis now believes that Dexter is the devilish beast from the Book of Revelation, and in turn kidnaps Harrison to sacrifice him as the final victim necessary to bring forth the prophesied end times. Instead, Dexter saves his son and defeats the Doomsday Killer. But as Dexter vengefully murders Travis in a church, Deborah arrives to profess her romantic love for her adopted brother, inadvertently discovering his dark secret. In Season 7, Dexter explains to Deborah the moral code imparted on him by their father Harry, leading him to only killing those who have killed others. While Deborah is distraught by this revelation, she does help Dexter burn down the church, and all of the evidence linking him to Travis's death. As the Miami Metro Police Department investigates the scene, LaGuerta finds a blood sample that Dexter was unaware that he'd dropped. LaGuerta realizes that this sample is stored in the same type of slide as the ones used by the Bay Harbor Butcher. Although Detective James Dokes had been identified as the infamous killer, he had confided in LaGuerta his suspicions of Dexter before his death. And now LaGuerta is ready to avenge her colleague and bring Dexter down once and for all. But it's not just LaGuerta who is trying to bring Dexter down. Lewis is furious at Dexter for spurning him and in turn spitefully attempts to ruin his life. And so Dexter turns the tables, ending Lewis's relationship with Jamie after providing her proof of his cheating and getting Masuka to fire him after revealing that Lewis had illegally acquired a prosthetic hand belonging to the ice truck killer. Deborah agrees to keep Dexter's secret on the condition that he stops his murderous ways. When Dexter learns that a recently paroled killer, Ray Speltzer, is back on the hunt, he begs Deborah to let him murder the man. Deborah refuses, trusting in the justice system, leading to Speltzer killing his next victim. Deborah is dismayed by this act and finally grasps an understanding of the necessity of Dexter's murderous actions, despite still finding them abhorrent. And so, when Dexter finally kills Speltzer, Deborah feels a guilty form of comfort. Elsewhere, Detective Mike Anderson comes across a stranger named Victor Baskov and inadvertently discovers a dead stripper in the man's trunk. The impulsive Victor then kills Anderson and flees the scene. The Miami Metro Department begins looking into the case of their fallen colleague, leading to Dexter secretly tracking down and killing Victor, while the other detectives investigate the strip club The Foxhole, at which the stripper worked. The Foxhole is actually one of many business fronts for the Koshka Brotherhood, a Ukrainian crime syndicate. With the police now looking into their affairs, one of the Brotherhood's leaders, Isaac Serko, arrives in Miami to resolve matters and find the missing Victor, unaware that he has been killed. As Quinn takes part in the investigation, he meets and falls in love with a stripper named Nadia. Foxhole manager George Novikov forces Nadia to manipulate her new lover into helping the Brotherhood find Victor. Thanks to Quinn's help, Isaac and George track Victor's body to the marina, where Dexter had disposed of it. There they find Lewis attempting to drill a hole in Dexter's boat as part of his petty revenge. Instead, Isaac tortures Lewis for answers, during which Dexter is revealed as the boat's owner, before executing the disgraced forensics assistant. Now knowing that Dexter was Victor's killer, Isaac makes it his personal mission to enact revenge. To protect himself, Dexter lures Isaac into a trap with a rival gang, whom the Ukrainian single-handedly kills. Isaac is arrested for the deaths, but George threatens Nadia's life if Quinn doesn't doctor evidence to secure Isaac's release. Quinn relents, but George refuses to release Nadia, instead paying Quinn off with $10,000 and threatening to expose his corruption if he doesn't continue to cooperate. A distraught Quinn gives the money to Batista, who is contemplating retiring from police work to open his own restaurant. Despite the case now being resolved, Isaac refuses to allow Dexter to get away with Victor's murder. The Brotherhood grow frustrated with his reckless revenge mission and send hitmen to kill him. Isaac confronts Dexter, explaining that Victor was his secret lover, and therefore his motivation to seek vengeance. But Isaac also has a mutual respect for Dexter and asks for his help in defeating the hitmen. Dexter and Isaac successfully kill the assassins, but George arrives to finish the job, shooting Isaac dead. Dexter then drops Isaac's body in the same spot he disposed of Victor's body, allowing the lovers to be together forever. When Quinn learns that George is going to send Nadia off to Dubai, he shoots and kills the strip club manager, then stages the scene by having Nadia shoot him in the shoulder to appear as if the killing was done in self-defense. But now that she is finally free from the Brotherhood's clutches, Nadia decides to move to Vegas to start a new life, much to Quinn's dismay. Meanwhile, the Miami Metro Police Department also begins investigating a recently deceased convicted serial killer, Wayne Randall, attempting to identify all of his remaining victims. In this investigation, Dexter meets Hannah McKay, the late killer's ex-girlfriend and unwitting accomplice who was forced to help cover up the murders. Dexter is immediately smitten with Hannah, who agrees to help the police identify all of Randall's victims. As she works closely with Dexter, he begins to suspect that Hannah may have also taken part in some of the murders, as well as murdering her own abusive counselor as a teenager, and most recently her own husband. Dexter then meets Deborah's new boyfriend, Sal Price, a true crime author who has compiled evidence confirming Hannah's guilt as a murderer. And so, Dexter prepares to make Hannah his next victim. But when she accepts both her fate and Dexter's identity as a killer, he instead decides to release Hannah, leading to the two having sex. As Dexter secretly erases all of Sal's evidence on Hannah, he is unaware that his new girlfriend has already taken matters into her own hands, poisoning Sal and killing him. Hannah finally confesses all of her past killings to Dexter, explaining her abusive past and the necessity of her murders. Dexter sympathizes with Hannah and declares his love for her, believing he has finally found his perfect match. Unfortunately, Deborah reaches her breaking point, asking her brother to murder Sal's killer, but Dexter refuses, choosing Hannah over Deborah, leading to Deborah finally confessing that she was in love with her adopted brother. A desperate Deborah begins investigating Hannah's past, looking for proof that she was in fact a murderer. But as she comes close to acquiring all of the evidence she needs, Deborah gets into a car accident and nearly dies, due to Hannah poisoning her. When Dexter realizes his new lover has tried to murder his sister, he chooses to give Deborah evidence that Hannah murdered Sal, leading to her arrest. Ultimately, Hannah is charged with murder, but manages to escape the authorities. Elsewhere, LaGuerta seeks the help of the retired Matthews to reopen the Bay Harbor butcher case, which he agrees to on the condition that she help him get reinstated to the police force. But as LaGuerta's investigation leads her to hone in on Dexter being the only possible suspect, Matthews grows weary and warns Dexter of LaGuerta's obsession. Estrada, the final criminal involved in the death of Dexter's mother, is released from prison. As Dexter goes to kill him, he discovers that LaGuerta had orchestrated Estrada's parole to lure Dexter into a trap. As LaGuerta leads a team of police officers to catch and arrest Dexter, he manages to narrowly escape, leaving LaGuerta empty-handed once again. Dexter then tampers with evidence that leads to the entire department believing that LaGuerta has been obsessively trying to frame Dexter as the Bay Harbor butcher, publicly disgracing her. But LaGuerta refuses to back down, threatening to not only bring down Dexter, but expose his sister Deborah's involvement in the cover-up of his murders. As the season comes to a close, Dexter lures LaGuerta into a trap, knowing that killing her is the only way to stop her investigation. Deborah arrives to stop the murder, convincing Dexter to accept the consequences for all of his violent actions. But Deborah then has second thoughts, remorsefully killing LaGuerta herself to protect her brother. In the end, Dexter comforts his sister, but is left wondering what it means for their moral codes now that they have murdered their innocent friend. In Season 8, several months have passed since LaGuerta's death. Although Dexter has once again returned to his normal routine, his relationship with a guilt-ridden Deborah has been fractured. Deborah hates Dexter for ruining her life and deeply regrets killing LaGuerta, motivating her to leave the police force to become a private investigator. In her place, Batista has chosen to stay on with the department and take over as the new lieutenant. The Miami Metro Police Department begins investigating a new serial killer dubbed the Brain Surgeon, who removes pieces of his victims' brains. The newly reinstated Chief Matthews brings in Dr. Evelyn Vogel to help them catch the killer, as she has been dubbed the Psychopath Whisperer. Vogel reveals to Dexter that decades prior, a concerned Harry Morgan came to her for help with the adolescent Dexter's violent urges. And so it was in fact Dr. Vogel who created the moral code that Harry instilled in his son, teaching Dexter to kill only those who deserve it. After the police police seemingly catch the brain surgeon, Vogel secretly reveals to Dexter that the real killer is still at large. Vogel wants to work with Dexter to bring down the brain surgeon independently, as the psychiatrist suspects that the killer is one of her former patients. Meanwhile, Deborah falls into substance abuse, which Quinn helps her cover up, though he grows concerned for her mental health. Dexter asks Dr. Vogel to try to help his sister cope with her trauma, and as Deborah works through her emotions, she discovers that Harry's death was due to his disgust at witnessing Dexter's brutal killings. And so, a distraught Deborah attempts to kill her brother by driving their car into a lake. But Deborah once again has second thoughts, saving her brother's life. The brain surgeon is ultimately revealed to be a former patient of Vogel's named A.J. Yates, who kidnaps the psychiatrist, forcing Dexter and Deborah to set aside their differences to save her. In the end, Dexter kills Yates and declares that Deborah and Vogel will always be his family. Elsewhere, Masuka is confronted by a young woman named Nikki, whom he discovers he fathered as a sperm donor. When Masuka discovers that his newfound daughter works as a topless waitress, he decides he wants a better life for her and gets her a job as a lab assistant. The department then begins looking into the murder of a young maid named Norma Rivera. Quinn discovers that Norma was having an affair with her wealthy employer Ed Hamilton before her death, and a witness claims to have seen Ed's son Zach near the scene of Norma's murder. As Quinn and Dexter attempt to further investigate Zach as a suspect, Matthews shuts them down, as the powerful Hamilton family help fund the Miami Metro Police Department. Zach then becomes a patient of Dr. Vogel, where he confirms himself as the killer. Vogel doesn't turn the young Zach over to the police, but instead wants to impart Harry's moral code to him. When Dexter discovers that Zach is motivated to kill his father and his mistresses due to their affairs impacting his mother's mental health, Dexter decides to take Zach under his wing to mentor him in the ethics of being a moral serial killer. Meanwhile, Hannah returns to Miami under a new alias, having recently married a wealthy businessman named Miles Kastner, who is powerful enough to grant her a new life despite her status as a highly wanted fugitive. Hannah explains that Miles quickly grew abusive and now hopes that Dexter will kill him. Although Dexter refuses, when Miles discovers that Hannah has been speaking with her ex-boyfriend, he brutally beats her, forcing Hannah to kill him in self-defense. Dexter then comes to Hannah's aid and helps her dispose of Miles's body, then asks her to stay in Miami to be with him. When Deborah learns of Hannah's return, she alerts her boss Elway, who in turn aligns with U.S. Marshal Max Clayton, seeking to acquire the hefty bounty on Hannah's head. Dexter's new neighbor Cassie takes a romantic interest in him, but with the return of Hannah, he rebuffs her advances. And so, she begins dating a man named Oliver Saxon. When Dexter finds Cassie murdered in the same fashion as Norma, he believes that he failed in mentoring Zach to properly channel his dark impulses. Dexter and Hannah then track down Zach, intending to kill him as revenge for Cassie's murder. Instead, Zach proclaims his innocence, proving that he was busy killing a stranger that had murdered 2 innocent girls. Dexter is relieved that Zach had adhered to Harry's code and helps him dispose of the body. But this burgeoning mentorship comes to an abrupt end when Dexter discovers that Zach has become the newest victim of the real brain surgeon, who somehow remains at large. Dexter investigates Zach's death and discovers DNA evidence that matches Vogel. Vogel then explains that she had 2 sons, Daniel and Richard. After Daniel murdered Richard, Vogel had him institutionalized, where he later died in a fire. Dexter realizes that Daniel had faked his death and has returned using the alias Oliver Saxon, the real murderous brain surgeon. Daniel remains bitter at Vogel for institutionalizing him as a child, but now asks that his mother help him become a moral serial killer just as she had helped Dexter. Although Vogel at first agrees to help her son, Dexter shows her footage of Daniel's brutal murder of Zach, leading Vogel to realize that there is no redemption for her son and that he truly must die. But when Daniel discovers this betrayal, he kills his mother, to the devastation of Dexter. As Dexter hunts Daniel, he plots to make him his final murder victim, before fleeing the country to live a peaceful life in Argentina with Hannah and Harrison. As Deborah assists Quinn in the official police investigation to catch the brain surgeon, the pair rekindle their old romance and Deborah decides to return to the Miami Metro Police Department. Ultimately, Dexter captures Daniel and prepares to murder him, only to find that he has lost his lust for killing, replaced with a simple desire to be with his family. And so, Dexter bids farewell to his dark passenger and abandons the restrained Daniel, calling for Deborah to arrest him. But as Deborah arrives, U.S. Marshal Max Clayton trails her, suspicious that she may be involved in harboring the fugitive Hannah. When Clayton finds Daniel restrained and prepared for murder, he mistakenly releases him, unaware of his danger. Daniel then kills Clayton and shoots Deborah with the marshal's gun before fleeing. As Deborah is rushed to the hospital, Quinn arrives to be by her side, leading to the pair declaring their love for each other. An unaware Dexter prepares to fly to Argentina with Harrison and Hannah, but a hurricane arrives, grounding all flights. When Dexter learns that Deborah has been shot and is in critical condition, he races to be by his sister's side. Deborah encourages her brother to live a peaceful life, absolving him of his sins. Daniel then arrives at the hospital to confront Dexter, but before either man can take action, Batista arrives to arrest Daniel. Unfortunately, Deborah's condition suddenly worsens, causing her to have a stroke and be left in a permanent vegetative state. A devastated Dexter then goes to the police station to confront the incarcerated Daniel. Dexter intentionally leaves a pin on the table, which Daniel attempts to kill Dexter with. Instead, Dexter overpowers Daniel and murders him, claiming the killing to be self-defense. And although Quinn and Batista are suspicious of the truth, they ultimately accept this reasoning out of vengeance for Deborah. As the season comes to a close, Dexter bids an emotional farewell to Hannah and Harrison as they board their new flight to Argentina. Instead of joining them, Dexter disconnects Deborah from life support, killing her, and then takes her body on his boat, dropping his sister in the sea as his final victim. Believing he doesn't deserve his happy ending, Dexter drives his boat into the oncoming storm. Although everyone presumes that Dexter died in the storm, he has instead assumed a new life as a lumberjack in Oregon, living in exile for his many sins. The story continues in Dexter New Blood. 10 years have passed and Dexter Morgan is now using the alias Jim Lindsay and living in the small town of Iron Lakes, New York. While living a simple life in a secluded cabin, Dexter has suppressed his killer urges, though is haunted by visions of his new dark passenger Deborah. As part of his new life as Jim Lindsay, Dexter is now in a relationship with the town's chief of police, Angela Bishop, works as a shopkeeper at a fish and game store, and goes hunting for wild animals to satiate his bloodlust. When a young man named Matt tries to buy a rifle from Dexter's store, Dexter performs a background check and discovers that Matt had been responsible for a boating accident that resulted in several casualties. As Dexter's dark impulses uncontrollably return, he chooses to set up a new kill room and murder Matt, who proclaims that his father will seek vengeance upon Dexter. Angela leads the police search for the missing Matt, and Dexter offers to help, secretly burning any incriminating evidence that may point to his guilt. Matt's father, Kurt, is first desperate for the police to find his son, yet as the investigation heats up, Kurt claims to have spoken with Matt via FaceTime and learned that he had simply traveled to New York City. This raises Dexter's suspicions, wondering why Kurt would lie about his own son. Secretly, Kurt is a ski mask wearing serial killer who preys on young women in need. Kurt keeps them imprisoned in a bunker, watches them live via security cameras, and upon finally releasing them to a supposed freedom, he actually shoots them dead with a hunting rifle as they run away. The police search for his son Matt concerns Kurt that they may inadvertently uncover his killings, and so he is forced to call off the search to protect himself. But despite Kurt's best efforts to avoid attention, true crime podcaster Molly Park arrives in Iron Lakes to investigate not only the disappearance of Matt, but also of the many unsolved cases of missing women. Meanwhile, a now teenaged Harrison Morgan arrives in Iron Lakes looking to reunite with his father. Dexter is first hesitant to connect with his son, not wanting to further ruin his life. Harrison explains that Hannah had died of cancer, and he has spent the last few years in foster care before trying to track down his presumed dead father. Dexter reluctantly allows Harrison to stay with him, but keeps secret the truth of his dark passenger. When Harrison is stabbed at school, he explains that it was due to his friend Ethan planning to kill his bullies, forcing Harrison to intervene and leading both boys to stab each other. Dexter doubts his son's story, fearing that Harrison stabbed Ethan first and may have his own dark passenger. Harrison is hailed as a hero by his classmates and begins a relationship with Angela's daughter Audrey. While at a party, Harrison overdoses on drugs laced with fentanyl, during which he confesses to Audrey that his dad's name is an alias. When Dexter learns that his son nearly died, he tracks down and kills the drug dealer. As Dexter continues lying about his past, his relationship strains with his son Harrison. This leads to Harrison taking a job working for Kurt, who begins to mentor Harrison, much to Dexter's dismay. Under Kurt's tutelage, Harrison begins to act out violently, further worrying his father. Meanwhile, Angela and Molly team up to investigate Kurt after discovering that he lied about Matt's whereabouts. The pair attend a police conference where Angela meets Angel Batista, now captain of the Miami Metro Police Department. Batista reminisces about his old colleagues Dexter and Deborah Morgan, leading Angela to realize that the supposedly dead Dexter is actually her boyfriend Jim Lindsay. When confronted by Angela, Dexter explains that the deaths of Rita and Deborah drove him to start a new life away from Miami. Despite this explanation, Angela is devastated over their relationship being built on a lie and breaks up with Dexter. When Dexter learns that Angela and Molly are working together on an investigation, he assumes it is into his own past. While following Molly, Dexter witnesses Kurt trying to trick her into entering his bunker. Dexter intervenes, saving Molly and thwarting Kurt's plan. When Angela discovers the corpse of her long-missing childhood friend Iris, she returns to Dexter for help. Dexter puts his past history in forensics to good use to investigate Iris's corpse. The police find a DNA match for Kurt on Iris's body, leading to his arrest. While interrogated, Kurt lies that his own abusive father was Iris's killer and not him. This is enough to secure Kurt's release, after which he threatens Dexter, knowing that he killed Matt. And so, Dexter plots to kill Kurt first. To take revenge against Dexter, Kurt forces Harrison to run through the forest as he takes aim with his rifle, just as he had done countless times with his past female victims. Dexter arrives just in time to save Harrison, forcing Kurt to flee. Dexter then finally confesses his past to his son, including his dark passenger, and vows to teach Harrison about Harry's code. The father and son finally reconcile and team up to bring down Kurt together. While investigating Kurt's bunker, they discover that he has kept all of his past victims as trophies, including the recently murdered Molly. The father and son then capture Kurt, and Dexter murders the man in front of Harrison, fully bringing him into his secret life. The pair then cover up Kurt's murder, but are unaware that the killer has sent a posthumous letter to Angela, claiming to have proof that Dexter killed his son Matt. Dexter realizes that with Kurt dead, the town of Iron Lakes is too good-natured for him to impart Harry's code to his son, and contemplates moving with Harrison to Los Angeles. But before they can leave for their happy ending, Angela arrives to arrest Dexter for Matt's murder. Dexter claims that Kurt killed his own son, and pleads with Angela to investigate the bunker to confirm the man's murderous villainy. Conflicted on whether or not to believe Dexter, Angela calls Batista, who explains that his late ex-wife LaGuerta had long been suspicious of Dexter being the Bay Harbor butcher. And now that Batista knows that Dexter faked his death and became a suspect in a new murder investigation, he finally starts to take LaGuerta's suspicions seriously. As Batista races to Iron Lakes with all of LaGuerta's compiled evidence, Angela decides to investigate Kurt's bunker, where she is horrified to discover the bodies of his victims. With Angela gone, Dexter kills her partner and escapes the police station, preparing to flee Iron Lakes for good. In the end, Dexter meets up with his son to run away together, but Harrison realizes that his father has just killed an innocent cop, and that his adherence to Harry's code is all a lie. Harrison laments that Dexter has ruined his life and gotten so many innocent people, including Rita and Deborah, killed. Dexter realizes the truth in Harrison's words and accepts his fate. Harrison then shoots his father, and as he dies, Dexter affirms that his son did good. Angela arrives and allows Harrison to flee, instead staging the scene to appear as if she had killed Dexter in self-defense. As the series comes to a close, Harrison departs Iron Lakes and reads a letter that Dexter had written to Hannah 10 years prior, learning that Dexter had wanted to allow himself to die so that his son could live.